This is not my Superman. But this isn't either. No. This is my Superman. Nah, but for real, this video is not going to be all about Nick Cage. It is going to be about these guys though, and unfortunately these guys too. Today we're going to put an end to the James Gunn Zack Snyder war once and for all, and we're going to talk about what actually makes for a good Superman adaptation, because the answer to that might not be what you'd think. Before we get started though, I gotta address that I'll be critiquing both of these guys, and no, critiquing one of them doesn't mean I'm glazing the other. I'm not a Snyder fan, I'm not a Gunn stan, I'm just trying to highlight the pros and cons of each of these guys, because despite what the internet tells me, I don't think it's so black and white when it comes to who made the better Superman movie. Just talking about Superman in general has basically turned into politics. There's only two sides to pick from, and they're both doggy doo-doo, and this is a problem. Also, side note, I get it. We all hate diehard Snyder fans, and we all make fun of them because they're actually unhinged, but Gunn fans don't get enough shit, because they suck too.
What makes Gunn Bros worse than Snyder Bros at this point is the fact that they think they're better than Snyder Bros, which makes every comment they drop so fucking pretentious.
They're maybe not as intense, but they're one of those fan bases who decide a movie is the best thing ever before actually even watching the movie, and they can be just as unbearable. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about DC's #1 Boy Scout in blue. Superman was the first real big superhero. He basically mapped it all out for the comic book genre for decades and decades. But he's not a lot of people's favorite hero, and he wasn't one of mine either. And no, that's not because I don't understand him and think he's boring. I hear these sentiments a lot, and I don't think it's that simple. Superman is one of the easiest characters to understand. There's really not a lot to him at his core. He stands for hope, justice, integrity, and a million other synonyms for good. He's here to do the right thing, protect people, and fight for the good of mankind. So yeah, on paper he's basically the generic blueprint. He's a guy who does good guy things. That part is not complicated. But at the same time, I get why he's tricky to adapt into a movie. Why would people care about the most basic blueprint when we got a million variations since then? Characters with more bite, personality, edge, flaws, more everything. Things become outdated, outdone. That is the problem with Superman. You do gotta respect what he did for the medium, and the fact that he represents the most fundamental idea of a superhero, and yeah, that can come across as boring, but I think that's just a product of people not knowing who Superman truly is anymore. Over time, I've come to appreciate Superman more and more, but he's been around for so long with so many different iterations that it makes it hard to pinpoint the actual staples of his character. I mean, they've done so many random things to him, like giving him robot helpers, cellophane guns, the power to shoot out a tiny version of himself out of his hand. Pink kryptonite. I mean, he's all over the place, so sifting through the bullshit can be tough. I'm 23, and a lot of people in my generation grew up on dark variations of the character. Injustice, Snyder, Omni-Man, Homelander, Brightburn, and the list goes on. These archetypes are popular as hell, but they overshadow who Superman actually is. At this point, most people are getting all their info about Superman from shitty AI YouTube shorts.
His waste will come out at super speed and destroy the toilet.
We were long overdue for a modern, definitive Superman movie, and a more hopeful one at that. Not necessarily some guy who's a glowing, hallmark beacon of hope 24/7, but like, at least let the man smile sometimes. It's definitely hard to strike a balance here, and I think Zack Snyder and James Gunn both got it exactly half right. I honestly think the perfect Superman would be a blend of both of these guys. A Superman you can plop right in the middle of this spectrum. So let's take a look at what both of these guys did right and the stuff they did wrong, so we can craft the perfect Superman. In Snyder's case, the half that he got right is mostly cosmetic, but that still matters. Cavill, for one, is an insanely good casting choice. Like, look at this guy, it's pure aura every time he's on screen. The visuals are impeccable. The suit design, the CGI, the fight choreography, the Krypton stuff, it's all very
fantastic
and just plain badass. As a film, Man of Steel is a really fun spectacle. It's a good time. However, as a portrayal of Superman's actual character, it's horrible. The tone is completely off. It's too dark, too gritty, and then we get to the final fight where the casualties are just unforgivable. And I for one think I've always been pretty understanding when it comes to this movie and all the hate it's gotten over the years. I mean, think about it. If you're a fairly inexperienced Superman getting jumped by a whole squad of Kryptonian soldiers who are dead set on destroying the world, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of collateral. There's gonna be a lot of damage. Realistically, you can't prevent every death. upon rewatch, it becomes clear the problem is just how absurdly little Superman seems to care. Clark doesn't give a fuck about civilians in this movie. Instead of trying his best to avoid death and destruction, he almost goes out of his way to cause more.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
And yeah, it's all very wicked as hell and gnarly, man, but that is not Superman. And while I understand the concept of reimagining a character and interpreting them in your own way, there have to be certain ground rules. If we're talking about a mainline in-universe Superman, there are certain non-negotiables. There are deal breakers. There are character traits you cannot change. Take Batman, for example. Batman doesn't kill. You might find that unrealistic, you might find that lame, but that's Batman, whether you like it or not. So if you say you like a Batman that kills, what you really mean is not that you like Batman, but that you like the suit, the gadgets, the car, and the general vibe. But the character you actually want is basically just the Punisher with bat ears and a cape. Same thing with Superman. If you like this guy, I get it. He's always mogging everybody with his big muscles and doing badass Dragon Ball fights as the city's crumbling to dust, and that's a fun fantasy. But just know that this is not even close to what Superman should actually be like. What you're a fan of is not at all true to the character here. On top of all that, I really don't like the constant God allegories and the forced Jesus imagery Snyder does in this movie. I get what he's aiming for, but it feels like he's trying to deconstruct the character in a way that's unnecessary and honestly kind of boring. He thinks he's being profound, but he's really just being kind of dumb. Superman is already interesting, okay? You don't need to nail him to a cross or question his role in the world every 5 minutes to show me that he's important. That said, Snyder is not all bad. We take it for granted when it works, but making a silly comic book character feel cool on film can be really hard. Aura farming can be gratuitous and a little on the nose sometimes, but in comic book movies, it is a big part of the job. Superheroes are inherently flashy. They're all about style, aesthetics. It involves a lot of eye candy. And Snyder actually had the right idea with a lot of this stuff, including the display of powers in this movie. Superman has never looked cooler, and I like that this Superman isn't a total pacifist. I like that he stands up for himself. I like that he can be intimidating. He just takes it way too far and loses the heart of the character along the way. So yeah, for Snyder, it's basically perfect casting, perfect visuals, cool use of powers, and then he misses the mark on characterization and overall tone. This was our only modern Superman for the longest time, and we were in dire need of a change. When Gunn's Superman movie was announced, I really wanted to be optimistic because, full transparency, I've never really been a big fan of Gunn's other stuff, but I wanted this to work so bad because we've been starving for a good Superman movie, especially considering this was supposed to be the start of a brand new DCU timeline. Also, that remix of the original theme kicks ass. I had mixed feelings about this movie when it was first announced because James Gunn has some real pros and some real cons too. The pros are that he genuinely cares about the characters he makes movies about, and he's a huge comic book nerd, so he actually knows the source material. The cons are...
Okay.
He's not gonna know where his eye is!
Why is Gamora?
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
Why is Gamora?
The stupid little pebble! I can do that with my dang finger!
You stupid fox.
He's not a fox.
I'm Groot.
I'm not a baboon either.
Why is Gamora?
It's my famous butt dance, my butt dance.
I'm gonna die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the galaxy.
Yeah, I'm just not into his whole brand of humor. I'm not into Peacemaker or the Suicide Squad, and a lot of his stuff feels like it's made for actual babies. I feel no difference watching Superman and a Guardians movie, and that is not a good thing. And look, I'm not opposed to a good time. I like fun. I just think Gunn often takes it too far. On a scale from sad Snyder to giddy Gunn, I want something more in the reasonable Raimi range. Those Spider-Man movies are a perfect example of a good tone for a Superman movie in my opinion. Lighthearted, but not weightless, sincere and campy, but not flat out goofy. But what we got here is a lot more childish. Even my 9-year-old brother said he didn't like it because it felt too cartoony, and he's 9. Then again, he did say he really liked the Flash movies, so he's not to be trusted. Now, here's the thing. As a straight-up film, Man of Steel did a much better job in my opinion, but as an adaptation of the actual character, Gunn did a much better job. It's just that Gunn then trips over his own habits, one of which being the whole ensemble solo angle. There's just too many side characters crammed into this thing, especially considering this is our introduction to the title character. It's supposed to be his first solo outing, and yet I feel like a lot of the characters in this movie just take away from that and are super unnecessary. People often complain about Amy Adams' Lois, and they hate how Snyder disrespected Jimmy Olsen. Understandable considering these are two very vital characters in Superman lore. But in this movie, Lois is annoying and toxic as hell, and Jimmy Olsen is a typical unfunny James Gunn gag character. He's there for comedic relief, but this SNL style humor here just left me straight-faced every time he was on screen. And let's be real, he was always the weakest of the young Shawns. If you know, you know.
I dazzle and I stretch.
A lot of people always give actors a pass because they don't want to be mean when they're reviewing a movie, so they'll say stuff like, oh, so-and-so did great with what they were given, it just fell flat because of the script. Like, no, I get that a lot of people worked very hard to create these things, and I respect that, but sometimes actors just do a shitty job, and it should be okay to say that. In this case, though, I actually do think it's mostly the fault of the script, because everyone is written like a melodramatic CW character. They constantly bounce between emotional speeches and quips, and none of it lands. It makes me feel nothing. It's just noise. I felt the same way about the Justice Gang, and even Lex. I like the casting for Lex, but the way he breaks down crying at the end, that's just not the Lex Luthor I'm used to seeing. I know he can be a petty, whiny man-child when he doesn't get his way, but the Lex I know is a lot more cunning and capable. Think Smallville or DCAU. Then again, anything is better than Jesse Eisenberg.
Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding.
Once again, I feel similarly about Corn Sweat. It's hard to live up to Cavill, but I genuinely think Corn Sweat is a great pick. I watched a lot of interviews with the guy, and you can tell he genuinely loves the character and cares about getting him right. It doesn't feel like some forced PR press tour bullshit. However, I just can't deal with some of this corny ass dialogue. Like that speech he gives Lex at the end of the movie. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just being too cynical, but I was so checked out of the movie at this point, and that speech was just an eye roll. It felt so forced, and the whole thing read like a scene from The Flash.
Everyone has darkness inside them. There is no cure for that pain. We can only accept it. That's the only way we can.
And that's where Gunn always loses me, the tone. It's just too over the top. I can't stand the super shit jokes. That was as annoying to me as the screaming goats in Love and Thunder. It's that very specific brand of LOL so random humor that I do not find funny at all. They're superhero movies, they're supposed to be fun. Don't take it so seriously. Okay, just because it's a silly superhero movie doesn't mean you can't critique it. It doesn't mean you can't want a slightly more mature tone. Not a dark tone, just a notch or two down from the constant jokes and goofiness we get here. In the same vein, the cutesy stuff in this movie doesn't do it for me. Not all the time, at least. And no, it's not because I'm posturing as some hardened, serious man's man who thinks comic books are silly and for children. No, it's because there's a way to do campiness where it feels sincere and it works. And then there's a way to do it where it feels cheap.
Titanium blades. They cut you diamonds.
I'm not wearing any diamonds.
What I'm basically trying to say is, I don't like Crypto.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I know, I'm in the minority, but that's kind of my whole point. What is something that everyone will universally love? A cute dog, a cute cat, a little robot, Baby Yoda, whatever this is. It's an easy way to get asses in seats and Funko Pop sales. I'm sick of the cute animal sidekick trope, but I also don't blame Hollywood for doing it because it works. Why wouldn't they keep doing it?
Boy, that is some manipulative shit right there. You know what? They got me. You know,
I know. It's like, yeah, I know it is, but I don't care.
Yeah, that changes everything. I mean, but you know what? We're joking, and yes, is when you put not only a dog but a puppy in there, that's cheating. You know, that ain't right.
And on top of that, I also hate the whole superhero family trope in comics. The Spider family, the Bat family, the Shazamly, Team Arrow, Team Flash, Superman. Everyone has a superhero family that shares the same motif as the main character. I'm not really interested in seeing Supergirl, and I'm all cryptoed out for the time being. But I don't want to sound like a cranky party pooper, so let's move on to what I did like. The main thing Gunn absolutely nailed is Superman's moral compass, his driving force. This Superman knows what he's here for, and that's saving people. He does question his existence a bit during that whole evil mommy and daddy storyline, sure, but he stays firm in his belief that humanity is worth saving and that he's the man for the job. I like that. He's not snapping necks, he's saving kids. That's Superman. He's kind of meant to be a dork. He's meant to be lighthearted. You should feel like a friendly, calming presence, like your bud who genuinely has your best interests at heart. And on that front, Gunn clears Snyder. Snyder's Superman is mopey, dopey, and always acting like he hates being here. Clark can stumble, he can get lost, but he always finds his footing. He wants to help people. Deep down, that is his whole thing. And yes, he's literally the type of dude who would go out of his way to save a squirrel in the middle of a crazy battle. But that being said, this Superman is kind of an absolute pussy. I didn't want it to be true, but the further I got into this movie, the more I realized this Superman is kinda just a whiny bitch. Cavill's version was an angsty teen. Cornsweat Superman is easily agitated, constantly flustered, and he just sounds like this all the time.
Super shit, come on, Lois, you know that one specifically irritates me.
And look, I get it. You want him to be more vulnerable and more relatable to give him depth. Fine, but you turn the dial way too far. Turn it back just a little because Superman gets his ass kicked a bajillion times in this movie. We are literally introduced to him laying there beaten up in a pool of his own blood. It feels like watching Matt get his ass kicked in every episode of Daredevil. Like, come on, man. Superman can and should lose sometimes. Otherwise, what's the point of any of it? You don't want to marry Sue who's just beating everybody easily all the time, but this movie has him catching hands from everybody in sight, and he's constantly either hurt or getting bailed out by somebody else. And I don't like that because Superman shouldn't be a pushover. He's kind, caring, gentle, sure, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't tug on Superman's cape. Making him a flawed punk rock character is more relatable, but he should still be that one guy who has his shit together and the guy you look up to. This is a character that handles shit. He stands on business when he has to, and he gets the job done.
Superman was just too strong at times. And I think that we're building a whole universe of characters. And I didn't want to have one guy who was so much stronger than anybody else that, a guy with a bow and arrow didn't matter.
And don't get me wrong, it's not like this was a total misfire. I completely understand where Gunn was coming from making him like this. And I actually love that the movie even shows other characters getting annoyed at Clark for being such a pacifist. Hell, part of me wanted him to just speed blitz that kaiju in an instant. But that's the whole point. He wants to avoid a fight if he can. He prefers non-lethal methods, even when it would be more logical, more realistic, and way easier to brute force the problem. And I know a lot of people want Superman to do just that, and it makes sense, but if you want that, and only that, there are a million other characters who do that you can go watch. Clark is different. He knows he can basically do anything, so he has the luxury of deciding to do things the right way, at least by his standards.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. What we have here is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am.
He holds back, he prevents casualties. This movie got that right, and I like that. I just wanted him to do all that without feeling like a dude you could bully in high school. He can carry himself as a sweet guy without being a naive loser. He can be cool, strong, and intimidating without being careless and gritty. I'm not saying he needs to be some Giga Chad or some dark mirror version of himself. I'm not asking for Homelander with a curl. I'm just saying there is a sweet spot somewhere here. It's hard to find, but it is there. Something I do like very much is that this Superman exists in a very lived-in world. We're not wasting time on everybody's origins. It's a comic book movie in 2025. We get it, and this movie gets it. And sure, sometimes James Gunn could get a little carried away with the D-listers, but it gives me hope that we'll actually see somebody cool like Brainiac one day instead of yet another flying Dragon Ball fight. I could easily see this Superman working together with the rest of the Justice League, exploring other planets, fighting Lobo, Darkseid, Muhammad Ali, DC, I'm down for all of it. If done right, I just need to see someone other than James Gunn take a crack at it. If there's one thing Snyder and Gunn have in common, it's that they're both very insistent upon themselves. They both do too much. You can see their brand, their shtick, oozing out of every crevice in their movies, and it becomes distracting. They stamp the characters with their own flavor, and then they stamp them again and again 1,000 times over. Every single person in a Snyder film acts the same. Everyone is solemn and gloomy all the time. The tone is always serious and dreary, devoid of all hope and joy. This is bad. And on the other side of this coin, we have constant Gunnisms, colorful, quirky comic book craziness.
Bricks and beans for baby hospitals.
Bed and breakfast for biker gang.
I doubled the cut that Dutton was paying them.
Doing our due diligence.
Every character just has to do a cheeky MCU-style quip every 5 seconds, and honestly, it reminds me of Taika Waititi because Gunn annoys me in a very similar way. They're both so set on turning everything into an obnoxious sitcom comedy routine. This is also bad. Now, obviously, a lighter tone fits Superman much more than a dark one does. I'm not saying Superman isn't inherently a little silly. He is. He kind of has to be. But there is a difference between lighthearted and straight up corny. There's a difference between charming and please stop talking. So if not Gunn and not Snyder, what do we got? Well, I think the most perfect example of a Superman-style portrayal in live action is honestly Chris Evans' Captain America. That dude is old school. He's goofy, he's got a kind heart, he just wants to do good. He's somebody that inspires you to be better, but also, he gets down and dirty when the situation calls for it. He's approachable, but he's not somebody you mess with. That is the blend, the sweet spot. Classic values, modern energy. You take that and put it in a Superman movie, and you've got a recipe for success. If you're like me and you want to experience a more balanced Superman right now, I highly suggest checking out the new Absolute Superman comics. It's a great reimagining while still keeping the core traits and values of the OG. If you want something more familiar though, definitely go watch Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. Really any version of DCAU Superman slaps. And honestly, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I actually really like New 52 Superman as well. I know I just lost all my nerd cred saying that out loud, but I think a lot of the issues people have with that version of Superman comes down to inconsistent writers and editors who clearly were not on the same page when creating this character. But at his peak, he really shines. He's one of the most enjoyable versions of Superman. He definitely prefers not to kill, but he's not hesitant to get his hands dirty if he sees a threat. Plus, I just think the costume is so cool. Since we're talking about costumes, we gotta talk about this trend where people complain about contemporary superhero suits. Seems like every other day, somebody drops a video about how they hate panel lining, how they hate texture, how if something isn't perfectly comic accurate, it sucks. Which is weird, because those same people are obsessed with designs like this. I'm sick of this rhetoric. I don't want a blue and gray Batman with underwear on the outside of his pants. I know a certain portion of comic book fandom does, and I think we all know the type of people I'm talking about because let's be real, comic book fandom gets a really bad rap and honestly, a lot of it is deserved. We can be some of the most annoying, pretentious people on earth when it comes to our precious comics. For the longest time, I thought I was going crazy because every time I'd hop online, it seemed like everybody collectively decided they wanted superhero costumes to look like this again. This? Oh no, this is horrible. Now this is great. And I'm just sitting here like, really? Are we still in the golden age? This looks objectively outdated to me. I don't think we need to return to this, but something I realized is that the people saying this kind of stuff are likely just a vocal minority. Your average person doesn't really have super strong opinions about comic book movies to begin with. I mean, most people just watch the content and move on. They're not commenting online about any of it really. So the people you see in forums and YouTube saying all this stuff are either hardcore comic book readers or just loud outliers. That could just be cope on my part, but I hope it's not because I'm tired of everything in this genre becoming so silly and unserious all the time.
Actually, everything about superheroes is silly and unrealistic. What do you expect? Just don't question it and have fun.
And to that I say, I hate this argument for two reasons. One, yes, nothing about a world where a big purple space alien snaps away half the universe is realistic. But when I say realistic and grounded, people automatically hear dark and gritty. These are not the same thing. When I say I want a touch of realism, I mean realism relative to the movie's own universe and the medium it's in. I mean the tone of what's happening on screen shouldn't feel like a complete joke. The subject matter is ridiculous, sure, but the characters should feel like real people, not caricatures. I should believe their choices, their behavior, their world. Suspension of disbelief is a thing, but you still gotta meet me halfway. 2. The medium matters. What works in comics does not always work in live action. If I see Superman wearing underwear on the outside of his pants in a comic, a cartoon, a game, an action figure, I don't bat an eye. It's fitting, it's classic, it's normal. But live action is straight up different. All these YouTubers complain about suits having too many unnecessary details, and sometimes I agree. But most of the time, those unnecessary details add texture and layers that make a costume pop on camera. Without them, you strip the suit down to a flat comic book look that often just doesn't translate well on film. This is cool in a comic book, but seeing it in real life is just... And look, the underwear is not a make or break thing for me. Superman is actually the only hero where I'm so used to it that I barely care anymore. I just don't prefer it.
And I still was going to go with not Trunks, and then you said...
You wanted Trunks in theory. You liked the
theory,
idea of Trunks.
Theoretically, I like the idea of Trunks because it's, you know, Superman I grew up with.
But the problem is they look kind of silly. You were looking for a way to make them look cool, or you were looking for a function, an explanation for having them that would justify them.
Yeah.
And my thing was just maybe they're supposed to look a little silly.
People always bring up this Cyclops scene in X-Men.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Almost forgot.
Oh, am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
This horse has been brutally beaten to death for 25 years, but I never really minded these suits and I thought they were fitting for the time. A cool throwback. Finally seeing the blue and yellow suit was really cool, but not vital. My favorite Wolverine movie is Logan, and all he pretty much wears in that movie is a tank top. I'm okay with modernizing costumes in the same way that I'm okay with modernizing the characters. As long as we keep the core traits of each, I think we're fine. I don't need Cyclops to have a ridiculous head sock, as long as he's got the visor and is true to the character. People are similarly complaining about the new Lanterns trailer, saying they're embarrassed to be a comic book property because of how low-key everything looked, but I for one think it's a breath of fresh air and I like the grounded nature of it. True Detective with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart sounds like a good time to me. And who knows, it's just the initial trailer. I'd assume we'd get a whole lot more green when the show actually hits. Until then, I'm not gonna jump on any bandwagons. Maybe it's just my Y2K nostalgia talking, but I feel like mixing in a bit of realism with superhero costumes shouldn't be treated as such a cardinal sin, like Iron Man's armor being practical rather than bullshit nanotech. Spider-Man looking like this rather than a shitty 3D render. Hulk looking like an actual rage monster as opposed to Mark Ruffalo painted green. The Incredible Shrek, if you will. I miss when things had more weight, texture, and grit to them. When it felt like you were looking at something you could see in real life. I do agree with some common costume complaints, like the obsession with characters constantly taking off their masks so that the actors' pretty faces can be used more in marketing and so that they can showcase their acting ability in pivotal moments. There's not a lot of praise I can give Daredevil Born Again, but at least Matt finally always has his costume on after multiple seasons of his redundant Spider-Man No More-esque story arc, but I digress. Let's get back to Superman. The whole appeal of live-action superhero movies for me is getting lost in a new world and imagining what these characters might actually be like if you saw them in real life. And with the recent trend of wanting superhero suits to look like they did in the 70s again, it just takes me out of it completely. This is actually one area where Zack Snyder shines. Everything in his movies looks so raw. Every frame is a painting, the costumes look badass, they look like super people. I don't love the fact that the costumes have sculpted abs because, let's be real, no matter how jacked you are or how tight your clothes are, ab muscles don't just show through fabric like that. But overall, he nailed the vibe. Corn Sweat's suit, while not the worst thing ever, looks lumpy and weird. Everything about the fit just feels off. It makes him look like a schlub, and honestly, that might be part of a bigger problem with the look of this movie, because this is one of the ugliest superhero movies I've ever seen. And And I'm not just talking about suit design. I'm talking about everything. The color grading is ridiculously bad. It fluctuates between a yellow Breaking Bad Mexico tint and a blue Ozark Season 1 tint. And we need to talk about the CGI. I feel like I was actually watching a motherfucker fly right here. Like, I believe that shit. Then I see this and I'm just like... What were they thinking? Back in 2007, I was watching Transformers and I was blown away at how good it looked. As a kid, you just kind of assume things will only look better and better as time goes on. And then we have a Superman movie in 2025 where every movement is just rubbery looking. It reminds me of this, and it's just jarring. And when you're making a superhero movie, that's a huge problem. People make excuses for bad CGI because nobody wants to take away from people's hard work, and we all feel bad for VFX teams getting overworked because of studio deadlines, and some movies where visuals are a second fiddle to the story deserve that grace. A superhero movie does not. I don't care whose fault it is. At the end of the day, it looks like ass and balls. And when you're adapting a visual medium like comics, it's important to get shit looking cool because that initial cool factor is a big part of the initial draw in the first place. It's literally half the battle. So overall, yeah, both of these guys don't get it quite right. Snyder's a great filmmaker, but he doesn't understand the character. And Gunn understands the character, but self-sabotages with his directing habits, humor, and typical team of oddballs shtick he puts in everything. But I'm not gonna fault you for liking either one of these guys. I'm aware they're both very competent directors in their own right, and both have live or die cult followings. And we all know fandoms ruin properties, but I just really don't want them to anymore. Superman is the quintessential superhero. It's crucial that we let the character stand on his own in media instead of feeding into this weird feud every time he gets mentioned. He's too important of a cultural icon to be diminished by all of this. And yeah, I know me saying all that is a bit preachy and ironic considering I just made a whole video talking about the feud, but my whole point is that this character is bigger than this and we need to stop the brain rot arguing because it's getting a little silly. There can be nuance. We can have discussions and disagree without turning it into a faction war, and knowing Superman will always be synonymous with this feud is honestly a tragedy. At what point are we gonna let this comparison shit go? As for me, and anyone else out there who might share my thoughts, maybe one day we'll get a good, balanced Superman. I hope we do. I think it's important that we do, and I can't wait for the day where these guys don't have to be mentioned in the same breath as this guy. But until then, if you want an alternative, try these out. Or maybe tell me about your favorite versions of Superman in the comments. I'm always looking to consume more superhero content, so any suggestions are welcome. And I hate saying this, but it really does help the algorithm and engagement, so leave a like if you liked the video and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you didn't like the video, flame me in the comments. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.